done. There is a start time, an evaluation time, so it gives you metrics on how long it took to run your script. And as we saw, as we mentioned before, the generic partition, right, you can see how you are doing in terms of what partition types you are using here, and then how many partition types you have total, and how many walls you have. This is just curious fact, right?
This is that project QA, QC side, where you start to, oh, that's interesting, should they be doing this? What's kind of going, why are they doing this? It leads you to start to ask those questions to the project team to put the information to the
And it's really fun to see how it populates the data where you're not doing much. Right? So that's
Is there anywhere keeping like an LOD piece of information, so you kind of, now that you can actually, I don't know if you can query it or not, but are you in the project information, are you keeping track of like what the project's LOD is supposed to be, or the deliverable?
I'm sure you could probably put some of that in for the level of detail, but the level of design, where it's design intent, you could simply have something that represents a table, and because you've located it in its final position, that's in 3D, it has all of the assets assigned to it. Its level of design,
right,
300. Level of detail, it's a box, almost. You know, I mean, it might not be the Herman Miller sleek render quality look. So it really depends on what you.
I guess I'm not looking for element by element, but kind of like as a project overall, do you guys keep track of? I mean,
not
an
yet.
RFP will call out like we want LOD 300, and it really doesn't translate back to what we do every day. But you guys kind of use that number to gauge, or
well,
it can help us to look for things.
Yeah, we usually agree to LOD 300. We know that sometimes it will give a bit more information.
Right.
It's a good point though. We're not currently querying for any information that can indicate level of development, but you can query things like families. So you can list all the families that you have, and modeling categories and tab categories. This is where you can see some indications of what your model has and how it was put together in terms of categories and subcategories. So that might be
the parameters on each of the families too.
Right.
So if that information isn't entered and filled out, it starts to be, it may be descriptive of kind of some of the things you have going on. Definitely can be explored.
I'm just going to run the sheet index item. So you can see that as I'm running the script, information reports in one tab, and then it goes to report in this global tab that we showed before, right? So it all kind of comes together on the main reporting page as the script is populating information. And usually when we do this report, we just run the script one after the other. It populates the information. We double check some things. We double check, and we send it out.
Periodically, we'll go through and validate and verify with the C2C tools, as well as just manual verification that something in our Dynamo or something hasn't broken somewhere. There are some towels that you might see that you might know that there's like 4 Revit links and it's coming up 0. Well, maybe your routine, I've had it a few times, has broken because of whatever package that you just updated or the conflict with something else, and you can go then and start to figure it out. But that's back of house.
So when you're running Dino, does it show up as red or something if it doesn't run the script?
Yeah, if there are errors internally in the script, it will highlight yellow. Of course, we over-rehearse this, so we're not going to see any yellow in this demo, but it is quite possible to break stuff.
It's not uncommon.
It's not uncommon. Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to mention. I wanted to mention the links script, the groups scripts, and the warnings script, because those are slightly more challenging scripts in terms of getting the information and validating the information. It turned out that with Dynamo, getting information about links is not that straightforward. It's not as straightforward as getting information about walls. All right, so I'm going to show you what I'm running the script. And I'm going to show you what information we get. And okay, so it's completed. So you can see that the information that we get here is as following. We are querying all CAD entities, and we all hopefully know that if a CAD element has a work set and a placement level, most likely it is a legitimate link for AutoCAD, right? But then because if you link an AutoCAD file, it's going to have a work set and it's going to have a placement level. Now, if you insert a CAD file, it's not going to have a work set. And if you insert a CAD file, it's not going to have a placement level because it's going to, usually it means that it is in a drafting zone. So by providing the element ID, you can search for that element and you can find it and you can deal with it one-on-one.
For so many years in Revit, when you've exploded or simply inserted an AutoCAD drawing, you weren't able to find it with the standard interface. I could sometimes purge it out if it isn't on a view, if I killed the view or whatever, but it was a real pain. It was very difficult. With the C2C link insert manager, fantastic, it's godsend. And that's actually part of where I got some of the inspiration. And we're doing some of that with Dynamo, but in here, we're able to see the instance ID, what view it's on, what work sets it's been assigned to, and it'll also show image files, what views that those are placed onto, if they're on drafting views and sheets, or where they're at. Also the file size, fantastic. Why is there a 28 megabyte image file that says the client's name in what views? And it's been sized down to fit over here in this little, on the cover sheet.
So the import and link manager tool also has a save report, and it's going to save a report in an Excel file, and this is super helpful. We are trying to get similar information with Dynamo, but it's not as straightforward as we originally thought. So this we rely on using the import and link manager to get that type of information.
And also validate when we do some of these things in Dynamo, and we're able to pull these bits of data. It helps to basically cross-check each other in how we're reporting. So it's just a back of house type of work, you know.
Yep. Then we're running the groups script. Just to show you some insights about groups. Okay. So as you know, in Revit we have placed groups that were placed in your model, and groups that you defined in your file. Right? And we all know that groups can be model groups and detail groups. And sometimes people can nest them, and nesting can happen in either way, right? It can be a detail group that goes into model group, or model group into another model group. So what we are able to query here, we're able to compare groups that are defined in the model versus groups that are used in the model. And and what we noticed by developing this workflow is that if things don't add up, so if you have unused groups, and so we have overall 62 groups, and then this is 62, and groups unused. So we can say that this minus that comprises all the used groups in the model. Now, if things don't quite add up, it means that there are groups with nesting. This particular model does not have groups with nesting, but usually it will show up here if things don't quite add up.
But this is the type of information when you start to have multiple hundreds of groups that are unnamed and unidentified, and it starts to open up that question and that dialogue. So
I wanted to mention that And then I wanted to show you guys the warnings. The warning script is more tricky because if you go to
You still
warnings,
have to export it. Sorry.
you still have to export it. There is no one-click solution that will take your HTML report and turn it into a mined data output. But what we can do is we can take the HTML file and we can create an Excel file from it. So, an example of how something like this would look like. And we're taking off the titles, the description, right? And then we're just processing and we're counting how many warnings we have, how many warnings of each type. I'm going to run my...
And those warnings, as you well know, there's certain warnings that are a little bit more important than other warnings. Like line slightly off axis, well, I've got a building that's on a 38-degree placement on the site. Of course, it's going to have some lines slightly off axis. But warnings like host is not cutting host, or items where you have these design options or conflicts with other design options and placement of objects on top of each other, duplicate objects, those are kind of flags and so on. So there's modeling practice type of scenarios that you want to help. It's another color on the canvas. It's another part of the story that you're trying to define and understand what's going on.
Right, and when you're looking, if you have, let's say, 1,000 warnings and you're trying to prioritize your time, if you have this type of summary, you can say, okay, I just have one of those, that's great, I can get rid of it, right? Or if I have the identical instances in the same place, it's fairly straightforward to address, and so you can really manage your time working with warnings.
And you get the element IDs, and of course with the warning manager you can go through all those. But all of these are metrics and data points that we're collecting, and we're formulating that idea. So we're building that structure, we're understanding what's going on in the project, and then we're taking that and then we're going to create our report in a very meaningful and useful way. So
one other tool that we were inspired by is the type swapper. The type swapper lists all line styles, annotation styles, and dimension styles, and duplicate families. So we don't have any duplicate families in this file, but our text types are fairly straightforward. Dimension styles.
As people are exploding stuff, these have a tendency to grow. So also being able to, unfortunately right now there's no way to capture this information and get it out other than doing screen grabs. So there's no way to grab those metrics if it's like a crazy insane list without a lot of typing or just a bunch of screen grabs in Photoshop cropping. But very meaningful to be able to access that data.
And here's how it looks like on the report side of things. We added one more category that we're looking for, the line patterns. As we mentioned earlier, if you insert CAD files directly, you're going to end up with a bunch of imported line patterns, right? So this is a clear indication that
somebody's been exploding.
Or in just inserting CAD. Right? So by looking at this list, we're able to see kind of the back end of things. Any questions about this portion of our presentation?
So is that Dynamo right there?
Yep.
Box?
This is all Dynamo scripts. Yeah.
Open Revit. Run it. You show us how you do it.
How to
Well,
do
after
that?
you install it, you gotta
Yeah.
install it, and then you have to have Dynamo as well
Okay. And
running,
then
because it works
still.
in conjunction with Dynamo.
But you don't need to open Dynamo and go find your folder and then hit run.
No,
Yeah,
you open
That's
Dynamo, you let it sit, and it's waiting for once you've installed Dynamo.
So this the Dyno 3.7 runs with Dynamo 9.1. Starting Dynamo 9.1, you cannot go backwards, and same with Dyno. It used to be differently. You used to be able to run different versions of Dynamo scripts with Dyno, but now it's they go hand in hand. So Dyno 3.7 goes with Dynamo 9.1. And next upgrade, you will need to upgrade both applications. So it is a bit, it's a bit time-consuming to set it up. But once the system is set up, you can just run the scripts and get stuff done faster.
It's really not quite to the level where we're able to deploy it to all staff, so that everyone can run these reports. It's so bleeding edge that it's always changing, and there's so much trying to keep it working, that it's really just for our process in doing these reporting things that we're leveraging tools like this. And it's absolutely not necessary. You could do this all manually. This is just a tool that we're leveraging to pull these data points. So it's just one of the ways that we're doing it. But it's by no means the only way.
And just to give you a reference point, a year ago, we could not be doing what we're doing now. Dynamo Bumblebee was released 6 months ago or so. Dyno was released 5 months ago.
Question
It's all new stuff.
Two things. One, quick point on Dyno. It's not good if you need to do the user input on a script. The script has to be
Right.
self-sufficient.
Right.
It won't cost user input, so people want to use it like that. Question, you mentioned Bumblebee. What other packages did you use in development of your script, or is that really the only external package that you use?
No, we use several. It's there is a screen grab and on the USB key, the documentation. We primarily rely on 4 packages. We rely on Bumblebee, the Arculab Greenshaw package, JVE package for get line styles, and the Lunchbox. There's one. We're using only one node from Lunchbox, but you'll need to install that. So, but primarily we're heavily relying on Conrad's packages for Bumblebee and Arculab Greenshaw.
And those packages with the actual versions of each of those packages, it's on that thumb drive, and we'll probably put it into that zip. It's just basically says which of the packages we have on there, if you're interested. So what we do is we take all this metrics, all this information that we got from the team, we mull it through, we formulate that story, we paint the brush, we figure out through our best practices, and we've been in the industry for a little while, so we're very familiar with industry-wide best practices, and don't insert AutoCAD files, things that'll slow down or hinder performance, hundreds of groups, fat images that are sized down, that they're not sized appropriately for the sheets that they're placed onto, for the ones that are absolutely necessary. Those, I mean, all of these different types of best practices throughout the industry, we're just applying those and then formulating this idea. So that's what this analysis is, and basically we take all of that. Once we've got that idea and that picture, a lot of these results that Masha was just running are in this ambulatory care clinic down in New York.
No, it's another building that we're running. But with the report, we're going to show you a complete report package for this particular project, NYU Ambulatory Care Clinic in Brooklyn. It's a new construction. There is an existing building on site, an existing healthcare facility. They're going to take the building down, and this is actually now under construction. It's 160,000 square feet, 5 floors, a bit lower than the current facility. And this project was done out of the New York office with some other people from Stanford helping out here and there. The project team was 4 people initially. When the project got started, it was nice and small and cozy. But then as the deadline was near, they ended up with something like 15 people on one file. And that's where we were invited to help out to to figure out what's going on with the model and why they're having slow down performance stuff, and so that's what you're going to see next.
So in that report, in that structure, basically what we do is we have the main page of the report, which most of the higher level staff that are actually that need to do the staffing assignments and say, okay, this stuff of cleanup is going to take 40 hours assigned to the BIM manager on that project, the project BIM manager, the project liaison, BIM liaison, whoever, and they're going to be assigned that task of doing the stuff that is urgent and the stuff that will improve performance. And then the rest of the team can start, so that they can start breaking this stuff down. They may not go into all of the nitty-gritty and the weeds, which we do in this report. But we break it down, we have a cover page of all of the metrics that we've collected. What's kind of showing, and we have these little comments, basically red, yellow, and green. So red is, you kind of need to pay attention to this. These are things of interest. Yellow are, you gotta watch, and then green are smoking good, awesome, keep it up, and don't let things get out of hand. Now we
There's not much green on this report.
Well, this is why we chose this specific report. And then here we have an executive summary, which are basically very composed, necessary actions, as is specifically said. These are X, Y, and Z. You have to do this now. If you don't do this now, we don't go into the if you don't do this now, but it will have severe impact upon your project. Then there are things that may not cause your project to deep six or fail, but are things you really need to pay attention to and will improve the performance for everyone involved. And at a PM level, at an office manager level, at a leadership level, talking to the hours that staff are spending waiting to access the files that, you know, you've got 10 people or 14 people working on this file and it takes a half an hour to open. Well, you open it at least once a day and you have this time period for saving times 14. That's simple math. Okay, you've got X number of hours. If I can cut that in half or better by improving the quality of the file, that's savings. Well, you shouldn't have been there in the first place, but forget about that. We're not pointing fingers, we're not pointing blame, we're trying to make things better. So that executive summary basically lays it out for them. And then we start to get into the weeds, okay? But we break this down not in a standard way across every single report we do. We break this down in what is most important to those teams. So how did we do that executive summary? This is in the strategy of how that executive summary is laid out so that they can have the stuff that makes most sense to do right now because of the inserted AutoCAD files. What are those instance IDs? They don't have to go look up an Excel file. They don't have to go look over here. They don't have to look at this other Dynamo. They don't have to look at any scripts. It's right there. The PM or the PA job captain, whoever, can hand it to the person who's being assigned this task. They can even take this red mark and say, this is going to be expected this many hours, and they can start building it into a project plan to address as it's moving. Because the project's not done at SD, sometimes it'll go on hold, but whatever. We're trying to provide feedback and input to making this stuff better. So what we'll do is we'll have a statement. Sometimes those statements will reference existing for validity. If we, okay, don't trust me, don't trust what I'm saying. This is what the industry is saying. This is what Autodesk Help is saying. This is what Augie is saying. These are what these cited references that have gone through over the years that inserted AutoCAD files are bad. Here's a couple links. Doesn't take much, it just has a couple hyperlinks and there are the paths or whatever. And the explanation for somebody who's probably not Revit savvy enough to actually talk the talk as we do. So being able to break it down like that is meaningful and useful to those leadership and understanding that.
A lot of time, so
yeah.
just a few examples from this particular project of particular things that we're seeing here. So you can see, for example, that this project had over 1,400 unplaced views, and they had over almost 8,000 line patterns. Clearly an indication of inserted CAD. Yeah, we don't see this stuff unless you run this type of reports. I mean, we keep repeating ourselves with the inserted CAD. Unfortunately, it's one of our biggest issues, and particularly in the New York office. So that and groups. So this is an example of where you can see the groups with nested. You can see that they have some stuff like that. But then, you know, this report was generated about 2 months after the Word report was put together. So you can see that they addressed some things. They addressed the things that we asked them to address, but we did not highlight the issue with the line patterns back then.
Just out of curiosity, how many of these things got cleaned up with the purge? I mean, like what this stuff is purge, because like if they're not using that line type anymore,
it's line pattern. Line patterns, you cannot. There is no tool within Revit that lets you to clean up line
Purge
patterns.
won't clean out
line patterns.
line patterns.
Yeah. So there are specific add-ins, and there are Dynamo scripts. And yesterday we talked to CTC about maybe them adding something to this purge. Imported line patterns, but it's not a native feature within Revit. And then warnings, you can see that they used to have many more. They addressed some of that stuff, and then yeah, that's the line patterns. So that goes to just a quick summary of when we hand off the report. 5 more minutes. We started to talk about some of that, Jude. So we send them the report, and then we schedule time to sit down and review to make sure that they understand where to look for that information, understand what the impact is, and they understand how to clean it up. And again, if we can clean it up with a script, or if we can clean it up automatically, sure, we'll do it for them, or we'll teach them how to do it themselves. But a lot of those items require manual input, like warnings. You need to know what's up. With partition types, you need to know the project. And this is where we're taking this work next. We are revising our Revit 2016 template, and this is the splash screen for our next generation template. And so we have a new version of our scripts that work with this generic annotation component, generic note block.
It's just a note block that has
block.
shared parameters in it, so that it's just dumb text that's actually from our Dynamo scripts as they're running. They already have access to the Revit, okay? So what they have, as they've run and processed, they're basically updating this timestamp, and then all of the fields that are in black are automated through those routines. Ultimately, we would love to get a process in the future, possibly, that we're able to batch process these things and have this maybe updated on a daily basis so that it runs overnight. And for many of our jobs, especially the jobs of concern, kind of have this metric available, like these are things if you're not already aware of, you probably should be monitoring. Now, some of these things, as we mentioned, are not able to be done automatically, but there are opportunities possibly to get some of them, maybe not all of them until a couple of releases of Revit further.
Yeah, the one cool thing about this feature is that this data is piggybacking on our existing Dynamo script. So as we're pushing information to Excel, we're pushing information to this particular note block. And we even have a few minutes for questions.
So with those questions, we have those 2 keys out there, as well as 4 more up here. So any questions?
So I guess what kind of stuff are you guys doing? I mean, you guys have to have standards, and how do you implement standards based off of this data?
There's, for me, standards are kind of a gray area. There's standards of practice, but every company standards versus an industry standard versus a client standard. If everyone's got a standard, is it really standard?
So, company standard, like, don't bring in CAD files. I mean, obviously,
processes and workflows,
yeah,
absolutely,
we have
you can
standards.
Standardize some of those.
We have standards, but we also have over 400 users. So how do we communicate with every person in our firm?
You have 400 Revit users?
Yeah.
Or okay.
Yeah, well,
so a lot.
probably more, and there are only 4 firm-wide support people, right?
Okay.
And so it's cool if we can get FaceTime with every person, and you know, we send emails, but people sometimes don't read emails, and I mean, even if you meet with somebody in person, they may choose not to follow your suggestion. So we have protocols, we have everything documented, but we're dealing with people here, and you all know how people are just people.
For the really good teams that are actually extremely diligent, they have a lot of this inside their project plan, and by having a couple of these reports periodically, potentially triggered by the QA/QC reviews that are underway for the project teams, so that they can actually affect the quality of the result. They can then start to track because it's in an official documentation format, and then they can, the PM, anybody, any leadership level person can pull out 4 of those reports that have occurred throughout this project. Well, why did we lose money? Or why was this one more successful than this other one that we were doing? Well, if you have some documentation of this nature, you're able to actually provide completely factual information versus speculation. Oh, well, Nancy and Joe and Susan were thrown on that team and they had those other problems on this other job and they just pulled and dragged and did. Well, that's all hearsay. That's not really the cause.
For maybe one more information.
The gentleman, black and white in back.
We have
the USB drives.
All right.
I was thinking that once you get the automated report, you know, where you can do it every day, that would be potentially a really good way to not enforce but encourage best practice, because it doesn't matter how many times you clean up the file if someone's, you know.
Absolutely, that's part of why we wanted on that splash screen so transparent to the team and saying, hey, you know, these are things that are really important to the quality and the performance of your project. So if they aren't already privy to it, it's a way to, it's on the open splash screen. It's the first thing that they see before they do anything else, and it's a very quick glance. And you can see, I would love to be able to have those as we set thresholds or something to go from different colors